All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into the wild world of modern dating. And let me tell you, it's a jungle out there.
It really is, isn't it?
Yeah, we're dissecting a podcast episode we found called, get this, The Challenges of Modern Dating. Why it's tough out there.
Oh, I think we can all relate to that title.
Right. And get ready, because this episode doesn't hold back.
I'm ready to hear it.
So we're all familiar with dating apps, right?
Yeah.
They promise to make finding the one easier, but
But it often feels like the opposite, doesn't it?
totally. It's like, remember that feeling when you're craving ice cream?
Yeah.
You open the freezer and you've got 50 different flavors staring back at you.
And suddenly you don't even want ice cream anymore, right?
Exactly. Too much choice, you know?
You've just hit on something psychologists call the paradox of choice. We think more options mean it's easier to find what we want, but it can actually make it harder.
It's true. I've definitely felt that way scrolling through dating apps. It's like, is there even anyone normal on here?
And that feeling is amplified by the fact that the digital age, while convenient, can lead to these really surface-level interactions.
You're preaching to the choir. One of the people they interviewed on this podcast even called it gamified. Like it's all just a game.
And that's the problem, isn't it? It's like we're reducing potential partners to a photo and a quick bio.
No wonder so many people feel like they're just a commodity to be swiped on.
Oh, exactly. It's dehumanizing, to be honest.
It really is. And speaking of feeling dehumanized, this podcast episode called out two other huge challenges. Sky-high expectations
Yeah,
and the fear of being vulnerable.
those are big ones for sure.
Right. We'll dive into those more in a bit. Okay, so one listener story in the podcast really got me thinking. They were saying how dating apps, it's like they make you feel like you're always playing a game, you know?
Oh, tell me about it. That whole thing of never knowing if the other person is actually interested or just, like, messing with you.
Yeah. Like, are they serious or just trying to boost their ego with another match? So confusing.
It's tough because when everything's through a screen, it's way too easy to, like, project your own stuff onto the other person.
Right. You get all these fantasies and anxieties mixed in.
Exactly.
And remember how we were talking about attachment styles earlier? Imagine how much harder it is for someone who's like wired to need reassurance in relationships.
Yeah, totally. If you're already someone who seeks validation and you're trying to get it from someone who's not really there,
It's a recipe for disaster.
pretty much, you end up feeling even more insecure.
It's like trying to, I don't know, put out a fire with gasoline. Speaking of which, another listener talked about how they were stuck in this rut of going on dates with people who looked great, like on paper.
But then there was zero spark when they actually met.
Exactly. Like they check all the boxes, good job, loves dogs, travels, but then you realize you haven't even laughed once the whole time.
It's easy to get caught in that checklist mentality.
Yeah.
But it's like, are we forgetting about actual connection?
Totally. We're so busy looking for the perfect version of someone that we miss the actual person right in front of us.
Right. It's like we're all trying to project this idealized image, both of ourselves and of what we're looking for.
Totally. And that actually reminds me of another listener's story. They were talking about how they had a really rough breakup and now they're just terrified of being vulnerable again.
Oh, I can only imagine. Putting yourself out there after getting hurt is so hard.
Right. It's that classic once bitten, twice shy thing. You put yourself out there, it blows up in your face, and it's like, why bother again?
It's so understandable, though. After heartbreak, it takes time to heal.
Exactly. It's like when you have a physical wound, you have to clean it, bandage it, give it time to heal. You can't just expect it to be fine instantly.
Right. You need to be patient and gentle with yourself.
And remember, it's okay to ask for help. Friends, family, a therapist.
Absolutely. Having a support system makes such a difference.
So we've talked about how modern dating can feel like this minefield of mixed signals, superficial connections, and the fear of getting hurt.
It's a lot, right?
It is. But the good news is, this podcast we're talking about, it didn't just leave us hanging. They actually gave some really good advice for navigating this whole thing.
Yeah, he's listening.
And the best part is, it's all about being intentional, authentic, and knowing yourself.
I like the sound of that.
Right. It's not about playing games or trying to trick the system.
It's about being real, both with yourself and with the people you meet.
Exactly. So, ready to dive into their advice?
Let's do it.
So are you ready for this first piece of advice? It's pretty simple, actually. Be picky about your platforms.
Yeah, don't just download every dating app you see, right?
Right. This isn't a numbers game, people. It's more like, imagine you're looking for, I don't know, a vintage record player.
Okay. I like where you're going with this.
You wouldn't just go to any old store, right?
Yeah.
You'd find a place that specializes in that kind of thing.
Makes sense. Find your people.
Exactly. Don't be surprised if you end up on a date with someone who still thinks cassette tapes are the future if you're using an app that's all about casual hookups instead of, real relationships.
Right. Do your research, read the reviews, ask your friends which apps they've had luck with, that sort of thing.
It's like that old saying, right? There's plenty of fish in the sea. Well, more like make sure you're fishing in the right pond.
Love that.
Okay, tip number 2 from the podcast. This one's a biggie. Authenticity is key.
Ugh. That word gets thrown around so much, though. What does it actually mean in the context of, like, online dating?
Right. It's more than just a catchy tagline. Basically, it means what you see is what you get.
Be genuine, you mean?
Exactly. Choose photos that actually look like you, ditch the filters, and for goodness sake, be honest in your bio.
Don't pretend to love hiking just because it seems like everyone else on the app does.
Exactly. Or claim to be a foodie when you haven't eaten a vegetable since, 2015.
Being yourself is so much less exhausting in the long run. You attract the right people, even if it means you don't match with every single person.
It's about quality over quantity, for sure. So how does this all tie into the next piece of advice, which is, drumroll please, communication?
Oh, communication. That's a big one. And not just like texting back promptly, though that's important too, but real, honest communication.
Okay, so what does that look like in the dating world?
Well, for starters, be upfront about what you're looking for. Don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm looking for a serious relationship, or I'm just looking to have some fun and meet new people.
Honesty is the best policy, as they
Like
say.
always. And along with that, express your needs and your boundaries. Do it clearly and respectfully.
Right, like, hey, I'm not really a morning person, so maybe no 7 a.m. phone call.
Exactly. And remember, communication is a two-way street. Really listen to what the other person's saying. Ask questions.
So many people forget to actually listen on dates. They're so busy thinking about what they're going to say next.
It's true. Okay, we've talked about being picky with apps, embracing authenticity, and really communicating. So, are you ready for the big one?
Hit me with it.
Vulnerability.
Ah, yes, vulnerability. The V word of dating, it can be terrifying, especially if you've been hurt before.
So true. But it's not about, like, spilling your deepest, darkest secrets on the first date.
No emotional vomiting on date number 1.
Exactly. It's about those small moments of openness. Share a personal anecdote, talk about a fear you have, something like that.
And see how the other person reacts, right?
Exactly. Do they meet you with empathy? Or do they shut down? Their reaction tells you a lot.
It really does.
Usually.
Okay, last but not least, the podcast reminded us that it's totally okay to take a step back from dating if you need to.
Oh, 100%. If you're feeling burned out, overwhelmed, take a break.
It's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to take care of yourself first.
Self-care is crucial.
Yeah.
Recharge, reconnect with yourself, and then you can jump back in when you're ready.
So if you're out there navigating the wild world of modern dating, remember to choose your platforms wisely, be yourself, communicate openly, and don't be afraid to be a little vulnerable.
It's a journey, that's for sure. But hopefully, with a little effort and a lot of self-awareness, you'll find what you're looking for.
This has been the Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into, well, deep dives. Until next time.